our foreign relations, our justice system, our governance, our international competitiveness, our education, our world-class festivals and entertainment, sports, politics, regional cooperation, and much more. Globally positioning Dominica within the Caribbean. Join the conversation on the Global View on Q. Tune in, call us, have your say. The Global View on Q, only on Q95, the big station.
Good evening. Very, very good evening. You in Redland, on the internet, at home and abroad. Thank you so much for choosing Q95. This is the Global View on Q. A very, very warm welcome to all of our Q family listeners at home and globally. I'm Sheridan Gregoire, Mr. G. It is Tuesday, the 19th of November, 2024. It's the 45th Tuesday of 2024, and it's just about 8:02 in the studios at Q95, the big station. We're live on our radio frequencies on QTV, on Facebook, and on YouTube. Please follow us at Q95 FM Radio. Share the live, like our pages. The on your phone numbers are all on the homepage of our website at www.q95da.com. Please get the latest breaking news and reviews on Q95 because you know it's true if you hear it on Q. So we continue to revive the spirit of graciousness, of love and peace and prosperity and unity among our Kalinagro and Afro-Caribbean brothers and sisters. It's our 36th Global View on Q show for 2024, and we continue to engage with our cherished local, regional, and global Q family listeners and friends of Dominica. Our distinguished guest tonight, Justice Dr. Irving Andre, who will be joining us shortly, businessman and pharmacist Andy Jolly. You'll hear a lot from Andy tonight. Engineer, dynamic young leader, senator, and generational wealth advocate, Delbert Paris. You know him well. UWP political leader, economic and economist Dr. Thompson Fontaine will be joining us a bit later. And of course, our very, very, very outspoken, very popular social scientist, Simeon Joseph, is right here with us tonight as well. We are, in fact, tonight it's all about the way forward to achieve real independence, fix our controversial elections, our elusive socioeconomic autonomy and progress. After 46 years of independence, last week we examined the shortcomings and failures that we have witnessed for the past 25 years, and we asked the question, are we better off in 2024 than we were in 2000, or even before we achieved independence? Were we better off under Frank A. Barron, or under Edward Oliver Cleveland, or Patrick Roland John, or Oliver J. Seraphin, or Mary Eugenia Charles, or under Edison Chenfield James? The answer was no, we're not better off now. So we must really do something about that, shouldn't we? So tonight we focus on where do we go from here to achieve real economic independence, fair elections, autonomy, and youth self-actualization after 25 years under the present DLP regime, which took over the reins of governance in January 2000. We will answer the question, have we sidelined the ideals of resilience, of sustainable development, and self-actualization of our youth? I personally believe that the answer to that is yes, we have. We all agreed that Dominica is going in the wrong direction. We know where we should be going from here. It is clear there is a lack of planning, a lack of justice and leadership and progressive economic and social direction, inadequate private sector investments and exports. Foreign earnings fall woefully short. Instead, evil spirits, Movilang, and demons took over the political discourse. In the face of severe lack of people's progress compared to what we see happening in other OECS islands around us, which have all changed their governments from time to time. Should we change ours likewise? We'll answer the question tonight. What about the talk of another general election again? Are the opposition forces ready and able, or getting organized, or getting ready to win an election, to lift the people up, fix the conspicuous failures that we see around us? I ask again, will the opposition forces be ready if there is an election within the next 4 months? Let's pave the way tonight in our discussion, pave the way forward for our governance, our education, our national security, our economy, and our standing in the world. Our CBI program and its due diligence. We'll talk about that a little bit, I hope. What do we do about the politicization of the public sector? The capacity of our institutions, their integrity, their accountability and transparency, like the Electoral Commission, the Integrity in Public Office Commission, the Public Service Commission, yes, the Police Service Commission, and then our national statistics and national audits. We seem to be severely lacking there. What do we do about free and fair elections? What fulfilling this dream of generational wealth that is now completely destroyed for our youth? Like we are now witnessing plain sight in Wesley, will our patriots continue to be seduced with 30 pieces of silver or with fatted calf? How do we repair our reputational damage? How do we reverse the assault on our consolidated fund? How do we give people hope? How do we rebuild the middle class and our small business sector? Let's really take a reality check on what we're doing, guys. Let's be decisive about what we must do to advance ordinary people's economic interest. And who will speak for ordinary Dominicans? Who's speaking for them now anyway? Who have not been able or who have not been enabled, in fact, allowed to accomplish their dreams over the past 25 years or to make any real progress, as they had, in fact, been able to make to a large extent under previous governments. What about families and children and cottage enterprises and education, our healthcare, our farmers, our skilled tradesmen, our fishermen, our electricians and plumbers and bus owners and drivers, our teachers and nurses and carpenters and contractors, masons, tipper truckers, our public officers, police and fire officers, all ordinary people who have been sidelined for too many years? Who's speaking for them? Who's looking after their interests? So I ask again, will it be left to people's power to get their electoral and campaign finance reforms and free and fair election on the level playing field in order to secure and sustain Dominica's democracy, restore good governance, and expand the middle class and our reputation and credibility in the region and global community? I reiterate again tonight, as I did last week, that a two-party system is better than a one-party state, which is what apparently exists in Dominica for all intents and purposes, as there is no opposition leader at this time. And I suggest again that in order to rescue Dominica, all opposition forces must immediately gather under one umbrella political organization led by a dynamic, thoughtful, smart, pragmatic, knowledgeable, experienced, business-oriented person, a skilled communicator who is people-oriented, articulate, hardworking, results-oriented person with great community organizational skills, or oriented and oriented, in fact, to technology-driven global fundraising imperatives. I don't see any difficulty in finding many Dominicans who are abroad who easily fit that bill. I believe some of them are right here with us tonight. A lot of it sounds like Andy, doesn't it? But I'm not calling names. Or will we continue to allow passport peddlers, wheelers, and dealers to betray the trusts of the people even further, and even further continue to sell out the future of Dominica's youth by continuing to allow them to control our major development projects and critical infrastructure with our own money? The answer clearly rests in people's power. So please, everybody, stop sitting on the fence and hiding in the shadows. That's not working. So my guest, that's Justice Dr. Irving Andre, businessman and pharmacist Andy Jolly, UWP political leader, economist Thompson Fountain when he joins us, and social scientist Simeon Joseph. They will all share their views on these and other related issues and how to help restore good, accountable, transparent governance, return Dominica to the path of economic recovery, democracy, and respect in the global community. So the long and short of it is that we need to put a new dynamic group of people in government as soon as possible to implement a more progressive people's growth driven action plan on the way forward for Dominica. So let's get down to business now. I just want to take a moment and shout out and how with loves and much appreciation to a big thank you healthcare providers and frontline workers and all our people that always shout out every Tuesday night. We welcome each and every Dominican and friend of Dominica to the Global Beyond Q. We embrace you wherever you are tonight in every nook and cranny every village, every community at home in Dominica, in the region, and globally. Again, thank you, Sherwin, keeping us on the air. Thank you, Lambi, on the console, directing the telephone traffic. We will take your calls a little later. As you know, the people's voice is always a priority on Q, and on the global view on Q in particular. So call us anytime during the program, and Lambi will take your calls. He will signal us whenever you call, and there will, well, let me just say, these were my talking points tonight on the global view on Q, and my distinguished guests, I'm sure, will do the rest of it. I want to apologize for Dr. Irving Andrew, who's not yet been able to join us. He's on an assignment. He will join us a little bit later, and for Dr. Thompson Fontaine as well. But I want to go to our good friend, Mr. Simeon Joseph, to maybe open the batting with us tonight. Simeon, you're muted. You might want to unmute your mic.
I hope I can. I was never, ever a good cricket player.
Is that right? But you could afford.
Good night, Mr. Gregor. Good night, Andy. Good night, Delbert, and to Dr. Andre and Dr. Thompson, wherever they are. Allow me to say good evening to them and good evening to Dominicans as well. But Mr. Gregor, I think you gave us a mouthful tonight to chew upon by way of introduction. You mentioned a number of areas that are of significance in terms of areas to be considered as we sprung from the conversation last week and to what we need to consider in Dominica. But I would like to say before we begin tonight that at the summit, at the pinnacle of everything that you discussed tonight, it pivots around good governance. Okay? And I would like to introduce my presentation tonight by equating good governance with an example to show the possibilities of when a country is governed properly, how a country flourishes. Allow me to go to the east of the globe, and most particularly Singapore, as a shining example of a country that has been able to flourish. Now, why do I use Singapore? Singapore is essentially the same size as Dominica, 290 square miles, okay? Singapore is basically, they would tell you, 27 kilometers from north to south, and essentially 27 kilometers from east to west and 50 kilometers from north to south. Now, significantly, Singapore, when they became independent a few years back, was one of the most backward countries in the East. And it took the fortitude, the vision, the foresight, and the leadership of a gentleman called Lee Kuan Yew, a simple lawyer, not versed in anything that had to do with governance, but a simple lawyer, not knowing much about economics or business or anything of that sort, but a gentleman who had the vision. And if you read the life and times of Lee Kuan Yew and the evolution of Singapore, you will see that this is a gentleman who simply stressed good governance, who decided that for the country to flourish, there must be no corruption, that public servants must be held accountable, that things must be done out of policy and planning and good practice. And that is why today Singapore can be seen as one of the examples in the world today with that is very flourishing. It takes less than half an hour to drive from east to the west of Singapore. Interestingly, one of the offshoots of the growth of Singapore is that its population has, multiplied hundreds of thousands of times. Because when you think of when just over a century ago, Singapore had 1,000 people. Dominica had more than 1,000 people a century ago. Okay, and today it has a population of 500 and something, 5 point something million people, with a GDP of $501.4 billion US in 2023. okay, and to see how they were able to develop Singapore to where it is today, as a total opposite of what many people would want to grow their economies by high taxes. Singapore has low taxes, but what they have been able to do as a country is that, and they have no net debt, as a matter of fact, in Singapore. So why am I using that? I'm using that to say that a small country, same size as Dominica, has been able to flourish and grow because of the fact that a prime minister with his vision and a good government decided that for the country to go, there must be good governance. Now, there are several, as I said last week, there are several tenets upon which government rests. And if we're looking towards seeing where Dominica can go, no matter what we do, no matter what economic plans we will propose, no matter what social plans we will propose, no matter what educational, public sector, health plans we will propose, without good governance, we're going to get nowhere with it. Okay? Because the experience of Dominica over the past 20 years is tantamount and enough to show us that with good governance, a country will flourish, and with bad governance, a country will go into ruin and decay. Okay? And it is not necessarily whether or not you have money. We have had money. This government in power today has been the richest government in power for the history of Dominica. And today, I mean, just yesterday, I was looking at it. It is said that the fire service doesn't have what you call a life fork or something like that to extract people from vehicles. And
it's called jaws of life.
A jaw of life to extract people. So where are we at that stage? And so hopefully as we focus on where can we go, I want to look at governance from two perspectives, because for us to understand how a country has to grow, and that's why I use the example of Lee Kuan Yew, we need to understand that the arms of government, which is the executive, the legislature, and the judiciary, which we often take for granted in this part of the world. You mentioned the fact that we do not have a leader of the opposition. Okay? And for any thriving democracy, for there to be a thriving democracy, there has to be a healthy legislature. And it's not just a legislature by people being elected to parliament, but a legislature where you have healthy debate, where you have good discussion, where developmental ideas are taken to parliament, where they are discussed upon, and where the people who have been elected by the population on both sides of the house can deliberate on whatever ideas and policies and legislation and regulation and laws that are going to be enacted on behalf of the people. Okay, so we talk about the legislature, so the judiciary, the legislation, and we can see what is happening with the executive. Without an effective legislature, you have something called a defunct executive, and we can see that. And not to mention the judiciary, which I would want to dwell on in my opening statement. So what gives us good governance? What gives us good governance? And I'm hoping that we can use that as our springboard. Good governance circulates around a number of ideas and a number of issues. One, in order to have good governance, there must be a certain level of high participation on behalf of the people. At one time, Dominica was flourishing in local governance, and local government in Dominica is almost dead right now. We can go way back to the years of the 1940s, the 1950s and 60s and 70s and even the 80s, where the local government system in Dominica was a thriving force to be reckoned with, where villages were developed, and we knew that government worked hand in hand with local governments because of the participatory aspect of democracy and good government, so that people felt that they were part of any major decision that impacts them. Today, a government wants to build an airport and they just go anywhere. They want to build a school and they just go anywhere. They want to set up a health center and they construct it anywhere. There is very little consultation now with the people, either on a direct level or through parliament, before any major developmental And so what we have had, as a matter of fact, we've had a lot of destruction of our natural resources. There has to be transparency, because people have to know what the government is doing on their behalf and what they are doing with their money. People pay taxes. We pay licenses. We pay all sorts of dues and levies to the state and to the government. And we have to know, when we take money from our hard-earned earnings, what is happening to it? How is it being accounted for? Why should we be paying taxes and we can't have medical supplies in the hospital? Why should we be paying taxes and there are not enough supplies in our schools? Why should we be paying taxes and the major items that the government should be governing are not governed properly? So there has to be transparency. We also have to consider the fact that for good governments, there must be consensus. That is what democracy is about, okay? And that is what eliminates any form of dictatorship. There has to be consensus. Consensus as agreed upon at all levels of the government system, in parliament, in cabinet, with the opposition, with local government authorities, with the different arms of government, with the administrative arm of government, with the public sector organizations as they operate. There has to be consensus. There, in line with consensus and transparency, there has to be accountability. People are not there on their own accord. People are not there because they have been ordained by some hitherto spirit to occupy a position. Once people occupy a position of state and government, they have to understand that they are accountable to the people who have put them there. And then to have good governance, you have to have effectiveness and efficiency. And there's no doubt now, anyone who operates in the government system in Dominica now will tell you we have one of the most ineffective and inefficient governments we've ever had. And we both know that effectiveness and efficiency go hand in hand, okay? You cannot be effective if you're not efficient. And how efficient is our government system, our court system, our healthcare system, our education system, the different government departments, even the business sector in Dominica. And then you have to have equity and inclusiveness. Okay, everybody must be involved in good governance. You cannot be excluding people. Good governance is not for some, those in power, and those who are not in power. Good governance cannot be for people who support the government and others who don't support the government have no pattern. There must be equity and inclusiveness, and there must be responsiveness. Good governance implies inherently that government has to respond to people. And the last one I would want to dwell on is the rule of law, because I think I would want to say that because I would like to highlight what is often considered in good governance the pyramid of the rule of law. And what am I referring to when we talk about the pyramid of the rule of law? There are certain elements and there are certain key ingredients in any society that dictates and determines whether a country is operating under the rule of law. And they talk about those terms in governance as the triangle of good governance. At the very top of that triangle has to be the what you call equity before the law. No one, every single citizen must be treated equally before the law, and that is at the top. Supporting that, of course, has to be the checks and balances on the use of power by individuals and government. So policemen, the director of public prosecution, the attorney general, the judges, and the magistrate must exercise their responsibilities and their functions, okay, with checks and balances to ensure that there is equity for everyone before the law. And then supporting that level of checks and balances has to be the right to silence. There must be a presumption of innocence. And there must be a fair trial and independence of the judiciary, which we can see is clearly eroding. And people mustn't divorce the rule of law with good governance or a thriving economy. Because, as we know, if you want a thriving economy and there's bad governance and there is no rule of law, the absence of the proper rule of law will almost be in bed with bad governance. And when you have bad governance, you undermine your economic progress. And undermining those rights has to be the right to assemble. Okay, there must be democracy through a formal legal process. There has to be access to justice, and there must be freedom of speech and the media. So I want to use that as my introduction tonight. You, what do you call it? Send me out to bat without being able to toss a coin. And I think the two gentlemen on the panel with me tonight, I think they would have made much better opening batsmen. But since you throw me out there to go and face the spin bowlers and the fast bowlers, I wasn't able to locate myself properly on the wicket. I'd like to summarize my opening statements tonight by saying that for Dominica to progress, if we have to look on the brighter side, we have to carefully and critically examine, okay, the system of government we have now and try to restore it as much as possible to a level where we have good governance. And equally, we have to seriously consider the rule of law that exists in Dominica today so that those things can be held in a balance in order for Dominica to prosper economically, socially, politically, educationally, and for the people of Dominica to have a chance. Because the example that I use to begin with, Singapore, is a shining example of good governance and the rule of law. Lee Kuan Yew tolerated not 1 cent of corruption from his ministers.
As a matter of fact, I think he started off by demonstrating that with his own family. I think he did something with them because I think some of them were corrupt and he dealt with them in the courts and under the rule of law.
Yes.
But you know, Simeon, you have a fellow, you have a way of saying what you want with your mouth. And you said that I put you to say things and this fella's better than you and all that kind of thing there. But Andy, I don't worry about Simeon. What I can tell you is this, that Simeon made some very, very good points here tonight about governance. One of the things in one of the items he mentioned, the question of efficiency and effectiveness. I wanted to add the word productivity to that because I think that is key. We'll find as we go along in expanding our economy. But Andy, one of the things I wanted you to look at, as Simeon raised them, in the whole question of the three arms of 3 branches of government. You have the executive branch, you have the legislative branch, and you have the judiciary. But it seems to me one of the difficulties we are experiencing in Dominica is that there seems to be no line of demarcation between, there are no guardrails, no boundaries. The executive control the legislature because they're the same people in there, and they seem to have great influence over the justice, over some magistrates and all kind of things. I'm not making any accusation, I'm just saying that it appears that way, that they have great influence. They appoint people, they pay salaries to people and all that. And your thoughts on some of that as we go into the business of governance and development and the advancement of our country and our people. You're muted and you might want to unmute your mic so that we...
So I'll tell you, sorry, my hand touched the button. I'll tell you a little bit. Simeon did quite a bit of coverage for you there. And I'll praise some of what he said. So just so that we'll just cover it a little. Good governance, accountability. That's a key aspect of good governance. Then you have transparency. That's going to be another key aspect. Transparency is an important element. It has to be there. Then you have the regulatory compliance, which is something that he went over. You must have. You have risk management, which is something I don't think that our economy or even our country pays very close attention to. Sometimes we get involved in different situations, and those don't really do well for us. Economic responsibility and sustainability, and all those things Simeon talked about a little bit and gave some idea what you need to have in order to produce this excellent economy. Is it possible? Yes. Our problem is that I don't think we started down that road. I don't think we started off with somebody with that type of vision. And I seriously believe that as we went through, things got muddled. So there was no division or no oversight on anything that we had to do. So there we go. We have nobody looking and nobody checking, and there's really nobody. And I probably am going to blame this to a lack of education more than anything else, because if we try to tell, if Simeon goes to Rosa right now and he tries to explain just what he said to so many people, I think you're going to get a lot of people that are either turned away or turned off. And that's because most of those things we didn't learn. We're a very young society. We're a very new society to the world. And what we did is that we tried to partner with whoever was going to kind of give us the best deal or give us as many things free or probably even corrupt us to some extent. So lack of oversight has created a lot of problems. And I know Simeon knows exactly what he's talking about, and many of the brighter minds do. And I just broke it down for him, which is simple. I understand that. But many of our people in society don't understand that. And therefore, we have had our leaders actually take advantage of situations that have come up time and time again. And I think the reason why everything got muddled, Mr. G, to put it simply, it's because we had to cover up things that happened. Nobody wants to go up there and look bad. Everybody tends to cover for each other. And you do me a favor and I'll do you a favor next time. Or you help me this time and I'll help you next time. When something comes up for you, it's a very small society. So therefore, nobody wants to step on each other's toes. The problem is that we've really given too many people too much leeway. And even in this system, I'm going to tell you, I am totally shocked that we can have any political leader serve more than 2 terms. To tell you the truth, I am shocked at how this happens in what we want. We want to call ourselves a progressive country. We want to call ourselves a developing country. In most developing countries, most leaders don't serve for more than 2 terms. Most leaders decide that they're going to rotate so that you will have different people come up with different ideas, different management styles. Right now, we have something that we've had in place for, I would say, a very, very long while. And it's obviously clear that it's not working. But we, as a group or as a country, we're so afraid of change that we're hesitant to change. And it's almost like the devil that we know is easier to perform with than the devil we don't know. But we are forced to change. And the reason why I want to tell people that we need to change or we need to start progressing is very simple. We are being left behind. So therefore, we must change. We must move ahead. We are no longer able to stay where we are and continue to succeed or continue to progress in any style. So Simeon made a couple good points. I rounded them off for many people, just given simple. And Simeon did a really good job in breaking them down. But all those things have gotten confused simply because we don't teach them in schools anymore. We don't educate our ministers anymore. If we take people straight off the street, we give them a suit, a tie, and possibly I think they give them a bag in their hand and they send them to Parliament. They have no idea how these people did in school. Their report cards are not promoted or are not given to us. We don't know if they were smart students, if they were mediocre students, or if they've accomplished anything. We do not know their history or their background. We do not spend time in educating them exactly how these systems should work. And I think in this nation's history, I'm going to probably put one of the things that have destroyed Dominica the most was what we called the Great Reset of 2022. And somebody has to correct me if it wasn't in 2022. But we have put some of the youngest minds in Parliament to govern this country with the least knowledge of anything that Simeon has just talked about. If I were to start this parliament again and create a reset, I would say it would be required to sit and study with Simeon for at least 2 months before I let anybody into the doors of parliament. And this is what causes so many misunderstandings. It's just the lack of education. So if anybody wants to know why Dominica is not doing as well as it should, it's because we have an uneducated parliament with so many uneducated leaders leading us. These leaders are not accomplished in the fields that they are subscribed for, and these people have no idea how they can help us because they themselves have not even helped themselves or taken the time to educate themselves. So we have a very simple problem in Dominica, which is education. This is why it's so important. Parents, please keep your children in school. Let them learn. It is very important for their future.
Yes, thank you, Andy, for your opening remarks here. But as I go to Delbert, you know, that young guy that everybody's talking about these days. I don't know what's going on, but I keep hearing his name everywhere I go. And every time I hear him, I think maybe they're justified in what they're saying about him when I listen to him. But you know, Delbert, a couple of things came up there. Simeon mentioned a couple of things. I just wanted to point them out as I go to you. He mentioned as part of good governance, you need high people's participation. People's participation. You know, we have a thing we call people's power. Simeon talked about people's participation. And we also in here, he said active local government, which we used to have. I believe in very active local government. I believe, in fact, that if you want to put the power back into the hands of the people, you have to have very strong local government. Very important. Then I also want to reference what Andy mentioned, but the question changed. Andy mentioned change a number of times. And do you realize that most of the countries in the OECs that are progressing and are doing well, that they've been changing their governments from time to time, they have real democracy. And Andy is saying that if people are well educated and if politicians and so on leaders they don't want to stay more than 2 terms. After that, they start to wheeze and all that kind of thing. They're lolling, finishing, and if you keep doing the same thing the same way every time, you're going to get the same result as Andy mentioned. The question of how many times we're going to go a reset and realize we're resetting the wrong people. Now, so I wanted to just start with you here now, David, by saying that Andy said we are being left behind. You know, remember I mentioned all these people who are being left behind, all our farmers and our carpenters, our healthcare, we are being left behind. Delbert, let me go to you so you can educate us about some of those, and particularly what we're looking for going forward for the young people of our country.
Good night, Mr. G, and thank you very much. Mr. G, the people that are talking to you and calling my name, I don't know why they're calling my name to you, but if they mention it to you, I think it's a good sign.
It's a good sign. It's a
probably
good
a very
sign.
good sign.
Yeah, because they're not talking about demons and evil spirits and
Well,
more.
there you go. There you go.
Exactly. It's a good thing.
It's a very good sign. If they're talking to you, I hope you give them some good reviews on me as well. And if you want if you want to know what more to tell them, you can call me. I'll
Well,
send you a text in the mail.
you can tell them yourself now.
No, it's not the time for that. We're not doing those kind of things now. Me and you will talk in chambers, and
All right.
I'll send you a
Okay.
check in the mail.
Excellent. Excellent.
Mr. G, it's good to be back on Global View. It's a place I like to be because the conversation, the level of the conversation is lifted here. And it provides, like Andy mentioned earlier, it provides a space where some of the panelists, like me, have the opportunity to learn from people like Simeon, who claims to not be a very good open bats, but he did a very fine job in my estimation, and he came in there very good, holding the other end of the wicket. Right? I used to be a very good cricketer myself. So let's see how third man down is working out, how third man down works out for me. But Mr. G, you mentioned a good couple of things, and Simeon mentioned a number of things that I took some notes of both this time and last time. Andy came in and he mentioned a few things that I took note of, and it is important understanding the governance framework that we seem to be missing, the governance idea and the education, as Andy mentioned, regarding governance and how it should look, what the results of good governance looks like, has been lost on us. And I think that is part of the reason we don't see the type of people participation that we should be seeing from a grassroots community-based level all the way up to the highest levels of our government. That is what has happened. That is what has been eroded for decades now, to the point where we're in a muddled situation, and we're almost in a position where we're not sure how to get out of it. And that is part of the problem. That's why shows like Global View on Q, with people who are willing to ventilate these issues, and to not just talk about where we are, how far we have been pushed back, when you measure us against the rest of the Caribbean and the rest of the world, in places like Singapore, who had less advantages than we do at the time they started, and who still we still have some comparable advantages even to this day, but these advantages are underutilized. And the reason for that, because we have people who have decided not to emulate and employ the good principles and tenets of what good governance is supposed to be. And it's one simple thing, and I wrote it down last time that we were here last week when Simeon mentioned it. And how the governance framework that you are employing and that you have employed, how will it advance the lives of the people that you serve? Because you see, Mr. G, one of the things that you hear being promoted and touted about is the amount of concrete that we have put in structures, and the roads that we have resurfaced, and a number of things, structures that are around the place. And don't get me wrong, infrastructural development is a key part of economic development and a good governance indicator, but it's not a standalone indicator. Because if you have roads and you don't have people that can afford the cars they drive on it, you have not governed well. If you have roads that are leading, just connecting communities, but there's no industry that makes these roads sustainable, there are no factories going, these roads don't lead to any factories, they don't pass through any places where people can actually, that get people to work, and that get people to get involved and facilitate the private sector, who is supposed to be the engine of growth in a country, then you really haven't governed well, and you really have not advanced the lives of your people. And that is one of the things I think I hope we can go in tonight and ventilate a little bit more on what does advancing the lives of the people we serve look like? And where are the key areas in Dominica's case particularly, that we should be gearing up and putting particular emphasis on, and trying to improve our efficiency and our effectiveness in developing these areas, these specific sectors that will result in the advancement of the lives of the people that we're serving. And he made a good point. We need to educate ourselves. And I don't want the listeners to think that he is strictly talking about academia, because people can pass subjects and still make a fool out of themselves, right? Education is a holistic improvement of the knowledge base and application thereof. I think we need to do more of that as a collective, as a people. And we can learn from others. We don't have to try to reinvent the wheel all the time. But what I think we missed, or we continue to miss, is the indicators that we should be looking forward to and paying attention to. And look at our neighbors, look at the international markets, look at places like Singapore. What are the indicators that is causing population growth, increasing the viability of the private sector, increasing your middle class, reduction in the poverty gap, reduction, improvement in the wage, in your minimum wage? That is improving and advancing the lives of your people. I think when we start focusing on those indicators, and we recognize that Dominica, with the resources that we have, with the skill set that we have, with the potential that we have what it takes to excel in those indicators, in those areas, to actually put ourselves in a position where these things become our common day. It becomes our common practice. It becomes our livelihood and what we see in our everyday environment. When we start to hone in on the idea that this is good enough for Dominica and we have what it takes to achieve this, I think we'll start making better decisions as to who we allow or we put in places of governance, who we allow to become legislators, and how we hold their feet to the fire and hold them accountable for effecting good change and resulting in effective governance that will result in the advancement of the lives of the people of Dominica who we serve.
And thank you so much for that, Delbert. Simeon, let me come back to you, because, we come full circle. We looked at the question of government. You looked at all of the ingredients of this good governance. And we've come to realize that in order for you to be able to get people to really want to aspire and to insist on having good governance, in order for it to ensure that it will improve and enhance their living standards and their own quality of life, in order to hold politicians and government people's feet to the fire to make sure they improve their lives. Otherwise, they're taking them out of there. Put somebody else. If you're not going to enhance my life, why build a road if it's not an economic road going nowhere? It's not going to help me, not going to help my farm. Why waste time doing it just so somebody can get a little 2 pence under the table? That don't make sense. I mean, corruption really can do a lot of bad things, and maybe we'll talk about that a little bit later. And so but Simeon, this thing called education. I mean, I'm glad that that they will clarify. We're not talking about necessarily in academic or intellectual. We're talking about education for life.
Correct.
For life.
Correct. And if that's where you want me to come in, allow me to for the purpose of this discussion, because I'm an educator at heart, look at two words: education and teaching, because Andy spoke about it. And when he spoke about it, it triggered a number of things in my mind as to the teaching process. Because, I remember long ago when young parliamentarians came into parliament, there were sessions for them being conducted at the Public Service Training Center by retired senior public officers, by well-qualified cabinet secretaries, etc., by people from even overseas, the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association at some point. And they were basically give them some induction and training and orientation as to one, the rule of law, okay, standard procedures of the public service, observance of general orders, for instance, and a few other things which I'm not going to list into. But, you know, the word education comes from a Latin word, educere. And contrary to what we think education is, the Latin word educere refers to the practice of drawing forth. Somehow we tend to think education is putting in. Education is not putting in. Education is drawing forth. In other words, and it's significant what I'm saying for this discussion. In other words, you look at someone, or you try to take the learned base of someone and you build upon it. You don't come with the presumption or the assumption that nobody knows anything. Okay? So if you want to educate people properly, you will do a diagnosis of what concepts they know, what is their general understanding of things, what are their thinking levels, what are their reasoning levels, what are their critical levels, and you help them to improve upon whatever levels of learning that they have. That is education. Now, in the realm of teaching, philosophy of teaching tells you that teaching is for concept development, not procedural knowledge. Because if you teach procedural knowledge, you're going to miss a few things. In other words, if you only teach people things to reach a certain step in life, so you teach them for CXC, you teach them for grade 6, and you forget all the other things in life, which is what Andy referred to, you are not teaching people, okay? Because you can teach English, but not teach communication, okay? You can teach human and social biology, but not teach emotional stability. You can teach maths, but not teach honesty. Because with teaching comes the right aptitudes and the right attitudes that go with learning whatever you need to learn. So when you develop concepts, when you teach people, okay, even if you can count, there's a certain element to counting correctly that says you have to be honest. Okay? If you teach people English, there's a certain element to teaching that says you have to communicate clearly, you have to communicate honestly, and you have to communicate factually. That's it. That's what you teach, okay? So conceptual development is what matters. Now, why am I saying this? I'm saying this to say that we have reached a stage in Dominica where, if you look at the education perspective and our development, we have reached a stage where we have a government that has brought us to the brink of telling ourselves that we can do nothing for ourselves. That everything we have to know and learn must come from outside. That we don't have that human resource base, because Andy's the economist, and I did economics at A level, but Andy has gone on further. The economic base of a country is the utilization of land, labor, and capital, and how effectively you utilize those things for the development of a country. Now, when you look at labor, we're not only talking about manual labor. When we look at capital, we're not only looking at the tangible gains of other things. We're also looking at the capital of our people. And labor and capital go together for the integral human development of a people, so that they can magnify what they do to develop their country. I'm not sure if I'm making any sense on that. Now, when you are training a workforce,
you're making a lot of sense.
When you are training a workforce, you have to take into account the fact that what do your people have to offer from all spheres of life? What can the fisherman offer? What can the farmer offer? What can the young unemployed youth offer? What can the medical doctor? So when you take into account what all the people can offer, you are better able to bring them on another level, because you see their needs. You will understand the actual needs of the people to take them on a higher level. Okay? When some time ago, this government had the logo, I think it was in 2009, the next level. And I challenged quite a few people in this government, because I was working in government at the time, in the Ministry of Education, and I clearly remember a budget that was presented in Parliament by the Minister of Education then, talking about the next level. But when I looked at the content of what was going to be presented in Parliament for just the education sector in Dominica, we were being nowhere taken on the next level. Because why? Almost every school in Dominica was being built by the Chinese or the Venezuelans. The entire workforce. So where were the young men from, say, the Kalinago territory or the Sansove who would have been able to access the skills in construction? Okay? So that they might be able to supplement what they have learned into their communities, where almost every training program was being done by outsiders. So that is just one thing when we're talking about if we have to link education. So the thing is, there's something called the education of the masses. And there's also something called the de-education of the masses, which I think is what has happened in Dominica. Because we have reached a stage where if we have to talk about the trajectory of our progress, you will see that we have lost our essence as Dominicans, who we are, what we are. And that simply has to do with the fact that we have taken away what is, look at Creole Festival. The majority of the artists on Creole Festival are non-Dominicans. Majority of the music is and we can produce that. So that's just one element. Now, when we have to look at the element of conceptual development for our people, it's even more sad. It's even more sad because you see, we are not training a sector of our young people to stay to develop the country. We are sending the message for people that for you to become something of yourself, you have to leave Dominica and go. We have a major brain drain in Dominica. And I can tell you for a fact, there must be close to 100,000 Dominicans now who have been trained in one way or the other. When you look at it, I can give you database. Okay? Where thousands of young people have left Dominica to go to study and have not come back. Or even when they come back, they leave. Or even those who are qualified and trained in Dominica, that is what I'm getting to, will not want to make any significant contribution to assist others towards better understanding anything that they need to know. How many lawyers? We must be admitting lawyers to the bar almost every week in Dominica now. How many of them will want to come and speak about matters of justice and legalities on the radio stations? How many medical doctors do we have? If Q95 calls them and say, okay, can you come and explain some medical thing to the people? They're afraid to come. Almost everybody in Dominica is doing business administration. Okay? I remember some time ago, Andy Jolly came on Q95 and started speaking economics, and Jolly's pharmacy published an apology saying that they do not associate themselves with the contribution of Andy. And all he was doing is talking pure economics and business, opening up the minds of Dominicans and enlightening them as to how Dominica should go to develop itself. So when we talk about, that's why I mentioned about teaching. Now, if people understand that in the process of teaching and learning, it's to help people to develop themselves, and you have to assist in the conceptual development of people, our professionals will be more willing and ready and able to help other people to understand the greater sphere of things, and they are not willing to. There are professionals in Dominica today, and without wanting to be too rude or a thing, you would swear that when they graduate, part of the graduation ceremony is the cutting of the tongue or the removal of the heart of conscience, because they see what is happening, they know what is happening. We have more graduates and qualified people in every sector of government. Just look at the public sector. In the days of Mr. Signoret and Mr. Shaw and Mr. Doctrove and Mr. Richards and my father Sylvester Joseph, these people didn't have bachelor's and master's degrees, but they held the government accountable. The ministers then couldn't do what they want. Okay? The people who were the custodians of government and in the public sector were held the ministers accountable. Today, we have permanent secretaries with double masters and triple masters and bachelors, and yet they cannot use that sphere of learning to hold the feet of the politicians at bay. If you understand what I'm telling you. So we are in a kind of quagmire here, okay? Because we have to ask ourselves, what are these people doing for Dominica, you know, and how are they serving the interests of Dominica and good governance? We have permanent secretaries before who knew nothing about economics and those kind of, all that they were public servants, but yet they could advise the governments, then Mr. LeBlanc, Mr. Frank Barron, Patrick John, and Miss Charles, on good economic policies for Dominica, on good developmental policies for Dominica, okay? On how to advance the health sector, where to build the proper roads and the proper feeder roads and what factories. Today, we have people with economics and business and management and all kind of things, and you ask yourself, are they advising the government today on those very same areas? If so, why is it that you have a government that seems to be willy-nilly doing what it wants and taking Dominica on a curve towards retrogression rather than progress?
You know, Simeon, I'm not going to ask you to grade our education system or education ministry or our education minister. I'm not going to do that. But I think I heard enough from you about the education there to come to my own conclusion about those things. But you spoke about this quagmire. I believe the best person to take it from there to help us come out of that quagmire is Andy. You know why? Because Andy has been there, he has done that. Andy's a successful businessman. When you reference Singapore, for example, and you talk about creating an economic base, where is our economic base in Dominica? What kind of economy do we really have? What is our foreign earnings like? What are we doing in terms of manufacturing and production and export and so on? What are we really doing? What kind of economy do we really have? Do we have something that, you know, I listened to our Minister for Tourism, Andy, talking about, oh, we had some cruise ships here and we had visitor arrivals and our numbers were much higher than it was 5% higher and that percent higher than some other base figure a few years ago. And I'm wondering what's going on. So I meant to ask the minister, for example, from the World Club Music Festival, do you have audited accounts for the last 10 or 15 years so that you can compare? Audited accounts so you can compare the statistics. And what kind of visitor expenditure are you really getting when all these cruise ships arrive here? How much money is remaining in the country? How much money are the vendors making? Are the bus drivers and tour operators making? How do you evaluate all those things? So, Andy, but
Well, I can probably talk a little bit to that, simply because I think if you have any economy or any economy base or any business, we're just going to reduce it down to a business. I think the first thing, if you would like to make the business look good, let's say you're trying to sell that business, you could use several different markers or statistics in order to highlight that business. The problem is that it's on the person who's purchasing the business to do the due diligence to make sure that those statistics that you have used are correct. So for instance, let's say we get 20 more cruise ships. Well, that's something really, really good. I think that's something we should brag and we should boast about. We got 20 more cruise ships. However, did these cruise ships bring any more to the economy? So did those cruise ships bring more people there? Did those people spend more money? I mean, are we just bringing cruise ships just so that we can say we had a cruise ship? I mean, I don't think that's a good idea. So we really have to see how it trickles down. And very frequently, with the administration that we have, I noticed that they give very interesting statistics. And those statistics are meant to deceive people. I'm a businessman. When I walk into a business, I can tell you very simple if that business is doing well. I can tell you based on the employee pay if that business is doing well. I can tell you based on how the employees are dressed. I can tell you based on how the employees approach the customers if those people are well trained. I can tell you based on the answers to the questions that the customer or myself would ask if those people are knowledgeable about the products that they're selling. So I think a lot of times we have people go up in front of us and they give big numbers, or they dress up in fancy suits because everybody needs a different color suit. I noticed we have a prime minister that doesn't wear the same suit twice. I don't know if anybody has noticed that. Neither does his wife wear the same suit twice. Now, if you have to know, that's a very expensive wardrobe, especially if you have to ask what happens to the shirt or the pants after it's being used once or twice. So again, if you're looking for people who dress up, they come in front of you and they give you ideas and tell you things are doing well. I literally watched, and many people can look at it, it's online on GIS. I watched our prime minister take a question from a reporter and they asked him, "Sir, what do you think about the economy as it is right now on September 30th? I believe it's still on board." And he said plainly, "I think the economy is doing great." And I think he was right because for him, it was doing great. He just got a raise. He has a beautiful house that apparently the citizens of Dominica pay for. He drives in a couple expensive cars. He gets to fly for free. He gets invited to the best parties in Dominica. He gets to visit with the rich and famous. He probably gets to eat the best food. He gets to sleep in the best bed. So therefore, the economy for him is great. A lot of times what we don't understand is that these people are telling the truth, but they're telling their truth, not necessarily the truth of the people or of the representative or of the business that they represent. So what we have to do, again, we have to educate ourselves. How do we verify what people are saying? How do we come to judgment on the statistics that they're using? A lot of the statistics that I use these days are used to manipulate our brains. And I cannot blame them because I'm going to tell you, truthfully, I have done it before. And I don't think there's any one of us here that have not done it. I don't know if anybody here has sold a used car before. When you sell the used car, it has no problems. It works perfectly fine. In fact, I hardly drove that used car. That used car is the best investment that you as a person will ever buy. I have told that to customers because guess what? That is my perception of the used car. So what we have to do is make sure we educate ourselves. Ask yourself today, what is the reflection of yourself versus that individual? What kind of car do you drive? And what kind of car do they drive? What kind of bed you sleep in? And what kind of bed they sleep in? What kind of house do they live in? And what kind of house do you live in? Ask yourself, where did you eat lunch today? And where did they eat lunch today? Ask yourself, when you go shopping for groceries, who pays your bill and who pays their bill? Simple questions. I'm asking the public to ask yourself. When you go down to the grocery store, who pays your bill? You do. When they go down to the grocery store, who pays their bill? You do. So you have to understand, for them, everything is great. So I do understand how psychology can affect human beings. And most people in this sort of position who are higher ups will always default to the fact, how do they feel at the present time? How do they feel about the economy? It's doing great. How do you feel about the economy? It sucks. You're the one paying taxes. You're the one paying for your groceries. You're the one paying for your house. You're the one paying for your car. You're the one paying for your children to go to school. And when you get sick and you go to the hospital, you're the one who's paying. Just ask yourself for 5 seconds, is a response like that justified by them? Yes, it is. Ask your power rep, who's paying for the car that they drive into work in every day? And they will tell you it's you. So thank you for paying for their car. Thank you for paying for their house. Thank you for taking time to spend money to send their children to school. But remember, charity begins at home. When do you get a chance to pay for your children? How are your children doing in school? How is your home? Do you have your water, your light, your everything? So again, we're looking at the economy, right? I think that's what the question is. So the economy is great for them.
Mhm.
Is it great for you? Again, simple questions. Now, I'm going to tell you my economy might be different from Delbert. Maybe it's different from Simeon. Simeon looks like he's living a great life on the beach over there. You know, Delbert and I look like we're working still. But I'm going to tell you, it's all perspective. But again, a lot of people have not taken the time to understand that. You know, it's so sad to see people taken advantage of so simply because they do not understand, Mr. G, something simple, that everything that they do and everything that they do is really for themselves. If you go in there and you put somebody that's going to manage your economy, it's for you. So you have to make the right choice. And our economy right now in Dominica sucks. This is just the word for it. I do not want to sugarcoat it. I don't want to tell you it's bad. I don't want to go into description of how bad it is. It just sucks. We have the lowest paid people in the Caribbean. It sucks. We have the least amount of people on an island in the Caribbean. It sucks. Our population keeps going down. Everybody else is accelerating and we are going backwards. It sucks. We have some of the highest freight and shipping charges of any of the islands. It sucks. We have the highest electric bill of most of the islands in the Caribbean. It sucks. Our water prices just went up. Imagine Dominica, a country that has water. Our water prices are more expensive than Antigua water, which does not have water, and they desalinate water, but yet our water prices are more expensive than Antigua. It sucks. So I beg people to tell me, how is this economy great for us? It's not. It sucks. So that's just the simple way to put it.
All right, so I get it. I certainly get it. I'm sure Delbert and I'm sure Simeon get it. I'm sure our listeners out there, and I want to shout out all those folks who are with us on Facebook and YouTube and listeners on the radio. I know they're getting it too. But you know, Delbert, um, Andy spoke mentioned a few things here about economy and the whole question of economic base. So certainly the economy he just described, does not sound anything close to the kind of economy that they have in what country did you say we're talking about a while ago? It was Singapore.
Singapore, yes.
That don't sound like that, and that don't even sound like you have a strategy to looking like creating a base. Not from what Andy's telling me, and Andy's an experienced businessman. He knows about Singapore. He has made comparisons with many countries in the world, including the US.
In fact, I have some friends who are from Singapore, the crazy rich Asians. They
Right?
have a lot of money. I mean, you hang out with those people, you understand what it feels like to have money. Nothing is beyond you.
So the question I have for you, Delbert, is you heard the kind of economy that our ministers have, our higher up people. What kind of economy do the young people have? The young entrepreneurs, the farmers, the carpenters, the masons, the plumbers, the electricians, the healthcare workers. What kind of economy are these people enjoying? As Andy is telling us, they're paying high tax. You look at the kind of customs duties. I'm hearing people sometimes they buy a little something to send for the people. They have to leave it in the customs because they can't afford to pay the taxes on the goods, take it out of the customs. Then, but in terms of, I know that you're mingling with a lot of young people and a lot of people professional in various fields. Tell us what kind of economy are these people enjoying and what it is that we need to do about it to lift up their lifestyle, their quality of life, and so on, to lift it up because really it needs to be lifted up, as Andy is saying. We're way behind everybody else in our region. Let's talk about that a little bit. And I want to also, because I think you're a budding politician, Delbert. And I think I want to challenge you to tell me what it is that the opposition groups, who's going to get all these opposition people to come together under one umbrella and to do something about the situation we talk. But that's where we are now. Everybody's saying we need to do like Antigua and St. Lucia and all these people. Change your government from time to time. What are we doing about that? To improve
Good
the
questions. Good
to,
questions, Mr. G.
to improve the
So,
economy for all these people.
so you asked me three questions. What is the general economy that a lot of our middle class and intermediate class is experiencing? What can we do about it? And what is the best political solutions? That's how I interpreted the question, right?
Absolutely,
So
absolutely.
great. So here goes, right? It sucks. According to Andy, it sucks.
We
The
got
the
that.
the the
We
the, the
agree.
economy that a lot of the business class, the private sector, our young people, is, if we go back to the beginning of the conversation that we have, there's a lack of participation. There's a lack of meaningful, gainful participation that has any positive outlook, and you hear it on the daily. Now it would be lovely for us to be able to measure the type of attrition that we have. It would be lovely for us to be able to measure the amount of migration that we have. It would be lovely for us to measure those things. Obviously, statistics in Dominica is not something that we're very fond of, and it's not very easily accessible. But just in my experience, from a day-to-day basis, the people that I deal with, the my family, some of my family members, some of my friends, some of the people that I went to school with, who together decided, hey, we're gonna go back and help to build our country. We are finding it hard to participate because the access isn't there. And that is one of the things that young people are looking for in their own country. Not necessarily handouts, because in Dominica today, you have some of the most innovative young people who can literally create things with their hands to create opportunities for themselves, because some of the opportunities that they are looking for are just non-existent. Imagine if you gave them a little bit of access. Imagine if you gave them some access. Imagine if you gave them the access to the type of holistic life education that they wanted. Imagine if you gave them the type of mentorship, the type of leadership that they needed, just to boost them along. It would change the economy. Imagine if our government recognized that the private sector is the actual engine of growth in any developing economy, what that would look like for Dominica. Instead, we have an administration that continually retorts that the public sector is the engine of growth. And I think they have it back to front. And that's part of the reason, because of that ideology, that's part of the reason we have not seen the type of growth that Dominica can potentially have. So, Mr. G, what do we do about it? What do we do about it? Well, we look at the engines of growth and we look at various sectors where we can actually spend money, increase efficiency and effectiveness, and advance the lives of people through active governance. One of those areas is in tourism. And Mr. G, I would like to employ our listeners, even some of our panelists. Maybe that's something that we can do on another show. Let's follow the money. Let's follow the money. I heard Andy talking about that on different on another radio program earlier on in the year. Let's follow the money. If you see where people spend money and how they spend it, you will understand where they are expecting to grow. Take a look at our budgets. Look at what we budgeted for last year, and over a 12-month span, look at our spending pattern, and that gives you a clear indication as to how serious we are about development. Take the area of youth and sports. Look at what we did for young people. 21 items. We only spent money in 3 of those items. How can we say that we care about young people when we wouldn't give them the money that we budgeted for? Money that is budgeted for, passed in the parliament, we wouldn't spend it. In the area of tourism, look at our spending patterns. In the areas of agriculture, look at how we're spending the monies that we're budgeting to create advanced development in these areas from a government perspective. That tells you how serious we are, and if we're really serious about increasing our tourism arrivals and stay over tourists. It tells you about the $700 million that we're planning to add to GDP by 2030 from agriculture alone. It tells you if we're really serious about achieving those targets. And Mr. G, that is some of the things that we can look at. Sustainable tourism. Let's look at the modernization of our agricultural sector by investing in climate resilient farming techniques, diversifying beyond the things that we have now into high value crops and organic produce, right? Strengthening farm to table connections with our hotels and expanding our agro processing industries. One of the things that I feel very strongly about as somebody with an agricultural background, one of the things my father always taught us that he learned from his grandparents is that a farmer, every day that he does not have money, he has food. Every farmer, the day that he does not have money, he has food. So regardless of what we got into, construction engineering, my sisters went into behavioral science, every one of us spent our childhood days in the backyard garden. Today I have a daughter and we were planting cucumbers the other day. We have some melon and tomatoes. I'm just saying, we have to understand how important agriculture is to us as a people. We have to be able to feed ourselves first, but go beyond that. Why aren't we adding more value to the products that we have? Why aren't we doing better with agro-tourism and agro processing? Why aren't we doing more with that? Because there's only so much that we can produce, but we can add value. We can add value to our cocoa. Chocolate is one of the biggest, the chocolate industry is one of the biggest industries in the world. Dominica is one of 9 countries globally that can produce fine and flavor cocoa. This is what chocolatiers around the world is looking for. We can produce it without doing anything to it. Why aren't we adding more value to that? Why aren't we adding more value to our mangoes and our melons and these things? Instead, we have people who can make a difference giving excuses about why we don't have factories in Dominica. When 40 years ago, we had factories here. 25 years ago, we had factories here. And there's a reason why we don't have any more and we have not made it a priority, is because we have not embraced the values of good governance that will advance the lives of people. That is why. It has nothing to do with electricity. Electricity is high everywhere. If we were interested in it, we would do something about it.
But 60 years ago, we had something called dumb fruit, We used to can
Of
our
course,
juice.
I
Yeah,
didn't eat dumb fruit, but I heard about dumb fruit.
dumb fruit. Drank dumb fruit juice. Lambi, I just want to let you know that
We
for
had
the rest of the
Beluga.
program, we'll take the calls as they come in. Just make us a sign and we'll take the calls. But I want to let Andy and Simeon know also. For the rest of the conversation, I'm just going to let you all jump in and let's just get the conversation flowing because I can see what is coming out here. And what it tells me is that
Mr. G, just to interject one second, there's
yes,
one other area that I want to touch on
go
that I
right
think
ahead.
is very
Go right ahead.
important for our young people in terms of providing access, and it's our financial services enhancement, right? Our banking sectors our banking sector in Dominica, to many, it is viewed as risk averse, right? The banks are not, they're not exposing their skin. They want you to bring everything that you have and what your grandmother had and what your great grandmother had to ensure that you can get some financing. It's very difficult and it's very prohibitive. What our young people want in Dominica is a partner, a financial partner, a partner that says, we will value your intellectual property. We will look at the ideas that you have. We will create an incubator or a business development framework that will look at the ideas that you have.
You want let's take a call there, but let's take
Yeah,
a
let's
quick
take a
call
call for
from
sure.
Lambi. We come right back to you. Go ahead, Lambi. We're not hearing you.
Good evening, caller. Please go ahead.
Yes, good night. Yes, I was going to show you 3 areas where Dominica has not grown. In 2002, Dominica boasts of having 258,000 cruise passenger arrivals. St. Kitts at the time boasts 150,000. Today, St. Kitts has graduated into 1 million. And we still there around 250 to 300,000 cruise passenger arrivals. That is one. In health, in 2002, no, not 2002, in 1952, sorry, Lennox Onitsha was born in Portsmouth Hospital through cesarean section. Today, not even a decent wound they can dress in Portsmouth Hospital. So I'm showing you where we have moved back. We have moved back. Electricity. In 1978, CDC at the time produced 11 megawatts of electricity for Dominica.
Breaking up.
11 megawatts of electricity for Dominica in 1978. Today, 46 years later, Domlet is providing about 16.5 megawatts. So in 46 years, our energy needs only grew by 4.5 megawatts. And if you juxtapose that to St. Lucia was doing 17 megawatts in 1978, same year like us. Today, they are doing 60 megawatts. They grew by 43 megawatts. So that's a country that grows. So that's just some economic indicators for you to see that Dominica have regressed instead of making progress.
Very significant. Very significant.
And I would like to say to this caller, I'm not going to ask your name, but I have to tell you that's a high quality contribution to that conversation tonight. You know, yes, I mean, look, here's what I think is extraordinary. We're all making the point. Andy made it, you made it, Simeon, and the caller is making it, and Delbert certainly made it. You know, this business of the engine of growth. I mean, this thing is totally misplaced to think that the public sector can be the engine of growth. What the public sector has to do is to create an enabling policy environment and let the private sector do its thing. Listen, you started mentioning some young people are doing things, and we're looking to see where they follow the money. The young people are putting their money where their mouth is. You know, every time the NDF, they have the little exhibition and so on. You know, annually they have this thing by road. Hundreds of young entrepreneurs coming forward and putting out the exhibits, high quality material. All these people need, just like Delbert is saying, is a little help. Give them the money they need so they can do their stuff. Help them to get the shipping arrangements in place, help them to get the marketing in place, because you don't want to have the manufacturers just focusing on marketing and all that. Organize that, so let the private sector do its work. That's what I say. Simeon, your thoughts?
Well,
Simeon,
Mr. Gregoire, in political science, oh, I'm on. In political science, they tell you that there are 7 steps to becoming a dictator, right? The 4th step is for government to take control of the economy. So that should tell you something. Okay, among all the others, which of course we're not discussing tonight because we're not talking about government and politics per se. We're talking about governance and productivity. But it's clear, it's very clear. And for a while now, we have heard that, we have seen what has happened. And it's only because we've had a government that wants to have absolute and total control on every sector of the economy. They want to have control over the government. They want to have control over the private sector. They want to have control over the economy. They want to have control over everything. And clearly what it means is that the government lacks the creativity. When people lack creativity and innovation, what they try to do is to curtail and control. Because as far as they see, if they don't have the capacity to do, no one else should have the capacity to do. Because if they give people the capacity to do, they are empowering them. And when they empower people, they lose control. And that's the formula. And so we have to understand it as that. That is where we are today. But what is even sad is I like what Andy said, and I like what Delbert said. Because herein lies the problem. And when you listen to this last gentleman there, you can see Dominicans are no fools. And there are many Dominicans who think like that. And that is why you cannot not mention electoral reform tonight. Because when you have a thinking population who can decipher and analyze and critically think and examine facts and present it as this gentleman does tonight, God knows the number of other humble, you could say unknown Dominicans who are thinking the same thing. Now, when people are thinking like that, an election comes around and they would like to make a decision based on that thinking to change a government so that a government doesn't last more than 2 terms, and the government who's afraid of empowering people because they don't afraid of losing control has to import voters to vote and to override people like this gentleman who just thought, because he lives in Dominica. So this gentleman is doing the thinking of the average Dominican, and you have a government that is afraid of losing power, so they import people to override the thinking of this gentleman who has just spoken. And so that is something which is very significant. But Mr. Gregoire, earlier on, both Delbert and Andy spoke about following the money. Someone is on following the money.
You go right ahead. I think maybe you might be too close to your mic or something.
Oh, following the money. And I decided to see if I could do some consultancy with certain regional and international agencies who I know.
Also, I think, Simon, that maybe Andy's mic might be on, so that might be giving us some feedback. Go right ahead.
That I know. And this is what I came up with. Now, we all know, Mr. Gregoire, that there is some missing money from our CBI funds. Okay? And I want to present to Dominicans tonight the impact of what they have missed out upon as a result of our CBI funds, and to show how, if our CBI funds were used properly, how Dominicans could have benefit. So, consulting people like the sports facility in England and a few other people like that, I'm not sure if we are aware that an Olympic-size swimming pool costs $1.3 million. $1.3 million. Okay? An Olympic track and field facility will cost $2.6 million to build. And that is from estimates I got from overseas. Okay? And athletics
is that EC dollars, Simeon, or US dollars?
US dollars. Well, no, I'm sorry. Yeah, US dollars, basic, just to create the field. We're not talking about all the other major infrastructure of stands, just to give them the running track, the athletics field and track. Okay, with everything else, according to a thing by Benyon Sports, is going to come to something like $5.2 million. Okay, EC dollars. Okay, it's about 1.495 British pounds. Okay, right. Then if we have to think about as well, how much does it cost to build a performing arts theater, a basic performing arts theater? It's going to come to 10.5 something million dollars. Okay, that's what it costs to build. Okay, a new fire station, complete with everything, it's going to come to $32 million. Okay, if we really have to look at those things. So I was trying, then if you have to look at it, we're going around building 5-star hotels and all those things. If we have to look at what is going to cost to educate on average someone with a very good degree in hospitality and culinary skills, it's just going to cost 30,000 EC dollars. How many Dominicans have been sent to study that? A hotel school will cost something in the range of $55 million. So I just brought that up today to say, well, okay, fine. And a canning factory, a juice factory. Earlier on, we talk about dumb fruit. Will bring something to the rate of $4.5 million with all the equipment and everything. So it's not going to cost much for Dominica to develop. And again, that hinges on my opening statement. Bad governance will deprive people of development. Now, when you look at all this money,
it's not really bad governance, though. I mean, it's just poor education. I just look. We got a prime minister that surrounds himself with I wouldn't say smart people. I mean, I'm in a business and I go into business every day. And you know what I do? I hire all the smart people. I hire people who are smarter than me. I hire people with the ideas. I hire people who can get the job done. Our prime minister has not done that, and he may be smart.
You're correcting us to a certain extent, but what the difference between public sector management and private sector management, there is an operative difference.
Yeah, but I know there's an operative difference, but we still just did the wrong things.
Yeah, but definitely.
All those ideas that you have, I'm pretty sure that, I mean, we could have come up with this, but 20 years now, and even though you're mentioning it tonight, we're still probably not going to use it on Monday morning.
They will not use it. And again, that is bad governance, because good governance says, okay, you come up with policies and plans and programs.
Yeah, but they have. We've had policies and plans and different. Remember, every time we've had 5 administrations come through here over the last 24 years, and we've gotten mandates 5 times. Probably, and Delbert can probably correct me, or you can correct me if it's 5. How many times have we had election since we've had the present government?
5
probably
times.
About five times, right? I'm just rounding it off to the nearest 5. And all these times we've gotten mandates with probably most of the things that you've said, but none of them have been done.
Right.
So the problem is that it's again, who's checking off these mandates? These mandates are brought to the people, and they're brought to them at election time.
Right.
And we have never, after election, these mandates, I don't know if they burn them, in a garbage bin, but they've never come to light after that. Well, so here's what the problem is. There's governments that we've had for the last 5 times, unless they change their strategy, it's probably going to be 6 times. We're going to keep getting mandate after mandate after mandate. Now, has anybody ever checked the last 5 mandates to see how many things were actually accomplished on those 5 mandates? And I'm telling you, all the stuff you're saying, definitely correct. It's not anything that you or I or Delbert wouldn't come up with on a Sunday night. The problem is that we've not had the proper people to execute them. And literally, execution is our main problem. And if execution is your problem, it's because of the education. So we have uneducated people who are leading this country. And I think probably Mr. Scarrett is probably one of the most educated. I know he's educated. He reads a lot. He's well-traveled. Again, Yes. But how about the others? We have 20, I guess the other 20 delegates that are sitting in office today, and I don't know which one of them actually does their homework, because you can start at Scott's Head and get all the way to Portsmouth, and not one of these communities are properly represented. And you ask yourself, who is represent? Are these actually people living in these communities? Does the Scots Head delegate actually live in Scots Head?
Right.
Because if they have to drive that road every day, does the Portsmouth delegate actually live in Portsmouth? Or is it just a spot? So
you
again, these have not. So the ideas you have are true and concrete. They've just never been executed.
But so you see, and it's interesting that you use the word mandate, because a mandate essentially is the authority given by someone, by a group of people, to execute things on their behalf. And therein lies the problem. Who have they gotten their mandate from? And that is why the government is doing what it is doing. It knows fully well that the people in Dominica who reside in Dominica have not given them a mandate. They have gotten their mandates from people whom they have brought in to vote for them. And so they have no responsibility to the people of Dominica, because they know they cannot do what they want. I'm going to use an expression. They can do the hell with what they want to the people in Dominica, because come the next election, they will import people to give them a mandate, and the people will go back. So the people who vote to give them the mandate cannot hold them accountable. And that is why we have to make that connection, as I said, between electoral reform, because they have no mandate from the people of Dominica. And so because they know that they are in power, not at the mercies of the people residing in Dominica, by people coming in to vote, they have no obligation to fulfill any mandate to the people living in Dominica. Therein lies the problem. Therein lies the problem. And so they can continue to do what they want, because they know even if they do what they want, they will import 100 here, they will import 200 here, they will import 50 there, and they might still get back in power. And so therefore they have no obligation to fulfill any mandate to the people who reside in Dominica, who pay the taxes, who live here, who have to suffer under the corrupt regime, and who will just, I don't know, continue to exist under a government, under this bad government that continues to preside over the governance of Dominica.
Well, Simeon, I think the government does have some kind of mandate, but the mandate that they're working on is an electoral mandate.
Oh.
I think this government literally, is pretty much flexing with the people's money as long as they can. And I'm going to tell you, I have people, and this is the way I recognize it. It's not because I went to some fancy college or studied some book. I have people who come to work sometimes, and I'm telling you, they are the busiest people ever. I mean, they look like they are working. You come to the end of the day, they're getting out the door at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And when you look at what they've actually done nothing, but they look busy. So the job of the government right now is to look busy and to appear busy, to appear that there is so much going on. And one thing that I ask of them is something very simple. And I am telling you, I will be a believer as long as somebody, and I don't care what people say about this, I will drink the Kool-Aid if I can see some results. If somebody can come by and tell me, here's where we started, and here's what we did, and this is what it's bringing to the table. When I live in a country and I don't understand how Dominica even makes its money, because, back in the days, I don't know, Mr. G probably remembers that. He's probably the oldest one here, not to tell people his age. But remember when you said, how do we make money? It's because we sold bananas. We knew that there were long trucks of bananas. When we made some money, we called in somebody to build roads because we knew we made some money doing bananas. When the tourists came here, they came by, they shopped. They bought all the things that we made in Dominica. I'm not talking about the ones that are made in China these days.
Right.
Because remember, we just become a fruit company at that point. We're just making a percentage as a fast food company. But they bought things that we made with our hands, our arts and crafts here, and they brought it back. They bought our alcohol. They bought our soaps because we had, I don't know how many people remember the factory down in Belfast.
Yeah.
We still have some sort of factory down there, but not as productive. Remember when we made Colgate here, Colgate Palmolive. I don't know if many people remember that. We used to make Palmolive soaps in Dominica. So we knew that there was a factory there. We knew people went to work there. And we knew that there were ships that exported those products because we would see them when we drove past Jimmy. We live in a country right now, we don't understand where we make our money. We live in a country, we don't understand how much debt we have in this country. We live in a country, we don't know who owns the country. We don't know who to ask a question to. And then, even worse, I hate to say this, we have press meetings for the government, and one person shows up because, and I don't know how this works, one person is allowed to speak for the entire Dominica. Now, don't get me wrong, I think that's a great idea because Dominica only has 50,000 people. The little city that I live in, which is Renton, Washington, has 120,000 people. There's 7 people who run that entire city of 120,000 people. Yet in Dominica, we have 50 to 70,000 people. We have 21 delegates, and the largest government we've ever had running this small town. I don't know how this happened. We have rampant government spending. We have so much waste, and then we have a lot of poor people. So anybody wants to fix this, they need to listen. We have unexperienced people. They don't know how to fix it. You know what? And I agree with them. If you don't know how to fix something, keep your mouth shut. Let somebody who knows how to fix it talk, I guess.
So, Andy, that's the right place to go. And here's where I move away a little bit from there and go back to where we started in the beginning, because Andy and Delbert, we need to follow the example of people who are doing better than us. I mean, if we look around us, Antigua, St. Lucia, Grenada, they all change their government from time to time. What Andy is telling us, we have a number of people in there who really don't know what they're doing. They're not getting the results, and Dominicans are suffering. Let's take an example, Delbert. We talk about this mandate, right? And we're supposed to grow our economy, grow our sectors and so on. We heard it some time ago. I recall a lot of young entrepreneurs in Dominica were very, very upset. Why? Because the government said to them, listen, everybody come and register. We have money from the World Bank or something. We're going to give you all money. Go and spend your money and register a company. And then after they registered the company, the government turned and tell them, wait a while now, we took the money and we put it in something else. I mean, is that how you're going to grow an economy? So all of the products that we're talking about, the young people already putting their money where their mouth is. If you see the kind of product that Dominicans are making that is already hitting the export market, but in very small quantities. These are not economies of scale that they can survive on and have any meaningful, quality of life on. They need a lot more economies of scale than that. But Delbert, because of you have experience, you've been talking to a lot of these young people, they are associates, all these contractors, all these people making stuff. Let's talk about their life a little bit and really what it is they need to understand. The kind of education we're talking about, education for life, has to do with educating yourself about governance and the impact that good governance can have on your business and your life and your family and your children. Let's talk about that a little bit, because I think we need to change our government, try something else. After, as Andy's saying, how many mandates this government has had? 4 or 5 mandates, and where are the results? So, yeah. I mean, how much longer are you going to say and take this? Try something else.
So Mr. G, I'm happy that you circled back to that conversation, because it's actually a conversation that I'm very passionate about. The young people need access. They don't have land, they don't have life savings, they don't have a lot of capital that they can put up to back the size of the ideas that they have. So they need a financial partner. And one of those things, I'm not sure if a government, one of our government institutions.
Delbert, let's take a quick call and I'll let you come back to you right away. Go ahead, Lambi.
Good evening, caller. Please go ahead.
Gentlemen, I enjoy listening to you all, but it would appear to me that you guys are waiting for the Messiah to come back to save you all. That is not going to happen. When the Messiah comes, he's coming for a different mission, not to get rid of that scallywag who calls himself Prime Minister. It's a shame that Dominicans take everything that he dishes on them, but they'll get involved in American politics. They'll talk Trump, 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 Trump. They're scared, they're beating their behind, and they say nothing. They have a police force that uses weapons on the people when they decide to demonstrate peacefully. Why don't they go to Haiti and use their long guns in Haiti? It's bloody idiots. Thank you.
Thank you for the call. Delbert, as I said, I mean, I said earlier, first thing I said is it's time for us to make a change. And
Mr. G, we're going to get the change part, but I really want to get this point out.
Yes, let's do it.
What I think will work for young people, and we have to find a way to do it, is to develop some type of investment bank. Maybe make it an arm of the aid bank, or upgrade the aid bank to an investment bank that is able to partner with young people and look at the ideas that they have, develop the business together with them, give them the access to the financing, and allow these young people 5-7 years down the road to buy out the shares in the bank and to own the business outright, that they themselves can now in turn become the investors, providing jobs and economic stability and buoyancy to our Dominica, because our young people have what it takes. We have the ideas, we have the wherewithal, we have the know-how, and we have the energy, but we don't have the money or the access. And that is the type of favorable environment that we're hoping our government, obviously not this one, but the next one, to provide for us so that we can start becoming the future that everybody is expecting us to be. Mr. G, when it comes to the solution, we are in a political environment, right? The environment that we have is political. It's going to take a political solution. To the point Andy was making earlier on, I really don't think that they're uneducated or that they're incompetent. I think it's part of the game. In my view, people who are very empowered, people who are well endowed, they are harder to control and manipulate. That's why a lot of the other Caribbean countries and people across the world are able to change their government, because of their empowerment. They're not as desperate as some people are. They're not as weak. They have more local and collective participation in their own self-governance. And that's why they're able to stand and say, hello, no, what you're doing, that's not what we ask you to do. That's not the mandate. That's not what you promised us in the last round of elections. So we think you should go sit down, and we're going to give these guys a chance. Now, Mr. G, who in Dominica's context, who are these guys? Who's going to make up these guys? I think we have the capacity to do it. One of the ideas that has been forced on us as a country, as a people, is that we have a lack of talent, is that we're not good enough to self-govern. And that is not true. The best of us has what it takes to lead the rest of us. There are people of good conscience in Dominica, sons and daughters of Dominica, who live here and some of who are outside, that have what it takes to lead Dominica. What we have to do is to come into one common goal. And that common goal is a better Dominica, not just for us, but for our children and our children's children. Dominicans deserve to have a future and a livelihood here that is first class, that is world class, and that is okay. Dominicans should view Dominica as a place that it is okay to live my entire life here and succeed here. But our government and the people who we place in governance need to understand that. And we need to be empowered as a people to hold them accountable for it. The people that are ready to put themselves up for that, I think now is the time for them to start stepping forward. There's nothing to fear. Only the fact that you have to be ready to work hard, and not just for yourselves. So that what Andy was saying a while ago, that there can be two separate economies where you have one group, small group of people who think that the economy is wonderful because of the houses they live in, the beds that they sleep in, and the cars that they drive, while others can't see that reality. No, the people who are about to lead Dominica are people who understand that Dominica has enough for all of us to succeed, and Dominica has the potential for all of us to collectively do well and take this country where it has the potential to be.
Well, Simeon, I agree with that entirely, but I think it's time to do something about it. What I'm saying is that there's a lot of talent outside in the opposition forces. There are many Dominicans who are capable. Just look around and you'll see them. I mean, you see them every day, Simeon. You run into them, you know them. A lot of capabilities. Look at people like Andy and Delbert and Thompson, and a whole set of people are out there. I mean, yourself. Everybody's saying it's time for Simeon to be in this thing. So, Simeon, the point is, Andy Caller is right. It is time for all these people out there, sensible people, capable people, to say, you know something, it is time for us to do something about it. This thing is really getting out of hand. The country is going astray. People are suffering, and unnecessarily so. I mean, when you talked about some of the things you gave examples about, you talk about the amount of money we've raised from the sales of passports. A lot of billions of dollars have been raised. We can't even put a little track, as you said, for 1 point something million dollars, a little Olympic sized swimming pool, another 1 point something million dollars. What is wrong with us? Simeon, you tell me what you're going to do about this thing out there, because it seems to me it's time for a group of people in the to come together and decide to do something under one umbrella and give the people of Dominica something to rally around, because I think the Dominican people now are suffering enough. They're suffering enough. They're fed up, and they want a new dispensation. Let's talk about that, Simeon.
Well, there are two dimensions to this, Mr. Gregoire. The first dimension is what Andy spoke about. Okay? The first dimension is the fallacy of projecting the image or the sentiment that things are all right, right? But people have to enlighten themselves and ask themselves, what is their own context? When they get up in the morning and they live their daily lives and they live every day, what is their real existential situation like? Can they pay their bills? Can they pay their loans? Do they have a proper savings account? They have to the people of Dominica have to critically examine their thing. One of the saddest realities of Dominica today is that we have seen what I would call the elimination of the middle class of Dominica. Let us not forget, if we throw our mind back to the 60s and the 70s, all right, there's a certain sector of the Dominican population that built up goodwill, that built up Wall House, that built up Kenfield and Mont Daniel. And these people were not people who were fed. And his father was from St. Joseph. Okay? There's a certain sector of the population from Dominica and all these other industries that Andy mentioned, and we could have mentioned going way back, right? The early Fokole industrial estate and the Kenfield industrial site. There's lots of companies that we can think of, right? As we grew up knowing places like Hayden Supermarket, okay, and Charles Pharmacy and all those people. I mean, there's a certain sector of the Dominican population that built Dominica, either through their hard-earned toil of working in government and being able to pay their bills and still invest in themselves and their family, or working hard through fishing, farming, agriculture, and other things like that, so that they can expand and grow themselves. Look at all the villages in Dominica. So that's one dimension to it, where the people of Dominica have to open their eyes and realize, okay, are we living our best lives now? And can we live better lives than we are living now? And they have to juxtapose their current situation and their current reality, as Andy has challenged us to do tonight, and compare it to those in power. Compare it to those who are living a life that is superior and supreme in all its ways compared to what they are living. And they have to ask themselves, what role as a people are we willing to play in ensuring that the people who have brought us back 30, 40 years are no longer governing us? Mr. G, Dominica has seen good days. Dominica has seen better days. Let us go back to the 70s and saw all the factories and families that came from the rural areas of Dominica and were able to grow, expand, send people with the first set of medical doctors and lawyers were sent to study by hard-earned money from parents from the rural areas. Mr. Kelsick from Wesley was able to educate how many doctors? Okay? The Robinsons from Marigot. All over Dominica, there are families, people who went to the soil and were able to take their children, put them on Melville Hall and send them to England, Canada, the world over to educate themselves. R.B.D. Douglas was not born with a golden spoon in his mouth. He was a man from Penville who would sleep on a boat on the seashore in Portsmouth and realize that, okay, he had to take a leap of faith and expand his estate today. Mr. Armour, Reggie Armour, was not a rich man. Okay, so the reality is Dominica has seen good days in every aspect of his life. And I believe Dominica can see brighter days than we are seeing now. And so, as I said, it's two-dimensional. The people of Dominica have to open their eyes and they have to come to the reality and awaken themselves and say enough is enough. That the people who have governed us for the past 20 years have taken away our brighter days and brought us into days of insecurity. And we now want to go back to the days, as Midnight Groover says, of milk and honey, where we can independently rely on ourselves for our own future. That's the first thing. And then this other dimension is those who can come on board, we need to put our differences aside. We need to dismantle our mantras of fear, so to speak. We need to get rid of our suspicions of each other. We need to look closer with each other and have some sober, healthy, constructive conversations face to face. Those of us who would like to take Dominica forward and without fear of anybody who's in government now, come together and say, okay, guys, our country is going to hell in a handbasket. Let us forget our differences. Let us put aside our egos. Let us decide, okay, in spite of all the personal or peripheral infractions that may have happened, Dominica is bigger than us. Dominica is bigger than any burdens that we carry. And so we need to step up to the plate, and all our professionals, all our well-intended Dominicans, all the farmers who are suffering, and the public servants, the firemen, the teachers. It's time, Mr. Gregoire. Give me a few minutes. I'm going to say it now. It's time for the firemen to step out of the fire stations and go on the streets and say, we will not take any more of it. It's time for the nurses to put skeleton staff in the hospitals and stand in front of the hospitals and say, we want to be able to serve in a better healthcare system. It's time for the teachers in Dominica who are under-resourced and understaffed to say, okay, we love our students, but we want better for our students. So we'll step out in the courtyards of our schools and not return to the classrooms until we see something better. It's time for the policemen who know that they are suffering, who know that they are being disrespected, who know that they are being devalued, to step out of those police stations Leave the commissioner, whoever inside of there, step out and stand with the people of Dominica and say, enough is enough. If there are forces in the police force who think, well, look, they are so aligned to the government, let them stay in there. But the majority of the policemen who know of the nonsense that is happening stand in front of these police stations and say, we will not return inside of there until we see some change. It's time for the public servants who are overseeing before their very eyes all the documentation and all the bad procedures in government that have been, it's time for them to stand downstairs the ministry and the financial center and every other government office in Dominica, stand on the roads in front of the doors, don't go in there and say, we will not work until we see some change in the thing. It's time for the people in the courthouses and the magistrates' courts and the banks and everywhere else, because the bank workers have to realize that the banks can only exist until Dominicans have money in their pockets. And if Dominicans are not economically and financially viable, then what's going to happen? The banks will close down. So they're not safe. They're not safe. It's time for the port workers and everybody else to say enough is enough. We're not going to go into any insightful demonstration. We're just going to be quiet. We're just going to withdraw. We're just going to stand back and will not do anything until those people who have Dominica at its neck choking us will have to come to this and say, it's time for us to go, because the people of Dominica have spoken and they no longer want us there. But that must happen with a group of people who will put their differences aside and say, okay, let us stand up to the level and the mantle of leadership, because Dominicans are looking for leadership. Dominicans are looking for the right person with the right tone and the right energy and the right influence who can give them that kind of hope, so that when they know they stand up, that person is standing up with them and will not be afraid to confront that evil system that we have over Dominica. And that's how I want to end tonight. That evil system must go. And Dominicans have to stand up to the evil system without any fear and with the resolve.
No, Simeon, I go to Andy for his.
I can.
One second, Andy. 1 second. I'm coming to you because I want to ask you to give us your final remarks as you do that. I wanted to just remind Simeon.
Before you go to Andy, it's time for the workers in the private sector as well, the pharmacies and the supermarkets and everywhere, to stand on the roads in front of those private sectors and say, we will not go inside of there, because our livelihood depends on Dominicans' life being better. And our businesses cannot thrive if Dominicans do not have money in their pocket and their lives are better as well.
Yes, I just wanted to, as I go to Andy, to remind us all, Simeon, and I'm pretty sure that you will remember vividly what I'm going to say. You know, there was a certain gentleman in 1979 who said, and the port shall not work, and the nurses shall not work, the firemen shall not work, the public officers shall not work, the teachers shall not work, and all the private sector shall not work. So, Simeon, what you're calling for there is something that Dominica has done before very successfully. And guess what they got at that time? 100 and something % increase in salaries in the public service. So let's remind ourselves that what you're talking is not about something. The only dimension that I would not add is that a certain high-profile lawyer said, yes, and we did that because we had a constitutional cool wash brigade behind us. That is what I recall as well. So, Andy, I mean, what Simeon is saying, there is precedence for that. Your final word, Andy.
Well, what he's saying is well, that's going to take a lot, because a lot of people have very harsh economic pressures on them. And it does make some sense in a way. But, I mean, we have to go back to the days when the politicians were the poor boys of the world. And this is how the economy was good. When you had the Frank Barons or the Ragged Hall hotel owners, and you had the business owners were the people who had the capital. And the politicians would go in there and do the bidding of the people. It has changed a little bit the politicians now almost manipulate and control the money, and the people have become poor. So there is a slight problem we have in society. And I don't know how we're going to fix it, but we have to fix it. The politicians have to realize, in order to have a strong society, that they have to put more money in the hands of their people. And if that can change, and I'm hoping it will, and I don't care who brings it to the table, to tell you the truth. In fact, the truth is that the government that we have in power today has approximately, I think, 3 more years to ensure that they accomplish something that is going to be good for the people of Dominica. There can be a change if they listen to the people of Dominica. If they decide that they would like to make a change for the people of Dominica, they could probably start tomorrow and you could see a big difference. If they decide tomorrow that they want to help the people of Dominica, Dominica could progress significantly. But in order to do that, the main thing we have to do, and this is the main problem I see with Dominica, is that our people here have very large egos. Their egos are so far ahead of them. Nobody wants to work with anybody. Nobody wants to listen to anybody. Nobody wants to seek advice from anybody. Our politicians have such big egos because we have made them into superstars. We have seen these common people who we've elected, we've put them on a big stage, we've played loud music behind them, and therefore, all of a sudden, overnight, because we gave them the popular vote, they've become superstars.
Yeah.
For no reason, overnight. And therefore, their heads, the ego, came out of their heads and said, I am great. The people love me. They've elected me. None of them have spent any time to understand, why have the people elected you? What are the people asking you to do? What would they like to see you accomplish for them? So we need to change the idea of politics. We need to change our mentality of people. Just because we elect somebody, that does not mean that that person's going to go up there and work magic for us. What we have to do in a world like today is we have to go along with proven test results. We have to go around with people that have proven strategies. We have to go along with people with past experiences. And each person that comes in front of us, we have to judge that person on their merit. So, are we ready for change? I don't know. I don't think we're ready for change. I think we have 3 more years with the people up there, and they need to go to work for us. And if the Dominican people are smart, they're going to say, I elected you. And I believe, and Delbert can correct me, or Simeon, that the last election, Simeon, you might have to mute your phone, mute your mic. But I believe that the last election was in 2022. And we're probably not due for an election for a little while. But we, as the people, have to put pressure on them to perform. It is shocking to me that our government needs a simple Viagra pill to perform. They have not performed. And I can tell you, even with the allies that they have, they've not performed. People that they've made promises to, they've not performed. They have only performed for themselves so that they can make sure that they get elected in the next election. This is the only performance I see. I am going to tell you that personally. Everything I see being done is so that somebody can get voted in. Politics has become a career or a profession. The people that are up there have been up there so long, they forgot where they are. They're no longer interested in the people. We have so many people that we write a check to, we even forgot how many people we write this check to. What are these people doing for us? I don't know. I would like sometime to sit down here with you, Mr. G, and call out every politician that is on our payroll, and then ask the people of Dominica, what has this person done in this administration? Each one of them, go through them name by name and say, where has this person ever performed? When have they ever been cited doing the people's work? So we now know what to judge them by. Not the fancy clothes they wear, or the fancy car that they dress in, or the fancy speeches that they give us. Because you know, when we hear those speeches, we hear those speeches at election. And then we never see those people again. We don't even know if these people are in state. We don't know who they're working for, what they're working on. No information. The last time, and I don't know, Mr. G can probably correct me on this one, we had a town hall meeting was over 15 years ago. We used to have town hall meetings where people could voice their opinion. Let the delegates know what they would like worked on. We were used to have simple exchange of ideas. Where have those things gone? We've gone bad. We need to make a significant turnaround. And it needs to start with us today. It needs to start with our minds. The rest of the world is looking and they're laughing at us. We're so far behind them. We need to understand that we as a people have to start evaluating the correct things. We need to start looking at the proper statistics. We need to stop looking at people because they have a nice jacket on or they pants. We need to know that these people are hardworking people. And I think most of all, I want to say, Mr. G, is that we need to make sure that the people that we choose to represent us as a public or represent Dominica, I don't care whether they're going to run a marathon or whether they're in political office, they're going to a meeting in China or in the USA, I don't really care. But those people are an accurate representation of the Dominican people. That they are not living in a different atmosphere, that they are not breathing a different air than we breathe, that they're shopping in the same supermarkets, that they're eating the same foods. You know, recently I was so perplexed because I heard our Prime Minister giving a speech in November for independence, and he talked about something that's near and dear to my heart. He talked about the health of our country. He talked about people probably taking better care of themselves, less heart disease, less obesity, less stroke. He talked about the type of foods that people eat. You know what? If he is really a man and a true prime minister, here's what you do. If you're so concerned about these things, then you decrease the taxes on the foods that people eat. You decrease the taxes on the good foods. If you're so concerned about the atmosphere, you make sure that people can afford good cars. If you're so concerned about our bikers, you make sure that they have helmets. If you're so concerned about our health in Dominica, make sure we have a good health system. Make sure that people can afford their medications. Maybe you decrease the duty on the medications. If you're so concerned about us as a people in Dominica, maybe you can start showing your concerns with your actions and less with the mouth. We do not want to hear lip service. We want to see action. And the smart people will get that. The smart people will see when the action happens. So I believe our Prime Minister is smart. But right now, he's smart with his mouth. I want him to go to work and get smart with his actions, because action speaks louder than words. Stop telling us what you're doing, what you're expecting. Show us the action. Show us the money. Show us that you care about the Dominican people. Show us that you are a true patriot. Stop talking about it. Too much talk, no action. That is our Dominica today. And that is why the world is using us as an example as what not to do.
And thank you
Mr.
for
G, Mr.
thank
G, before
once yeah, go ahead, Simeon. I have to come back to you, Simeon.
yeah, before Delbert comes in, I just want to respond to Andy, and just to recognize his hope in the possibility of this government changing. But I think we should give up any hope that they can further qualify themselves, because they have qualified themselves into being disqualified. And so I don't think there can be any hope for them again into
So are you saying that
becoming.
none of these people are patriots, Simeon? Are you saying that
None,
our
I don't, yeah,
government has lost their way
yes,
and they are no
yes,
longer valid
point blank.
citizens of Dominica or do not care about the
No,
Dominican people?
I would say they are citizens of Dominica. I think they have lost their validity as citizens of Dominica based on what they have done to Dominica. I don't think I cannot consider them as patriots, because they have destroyed every structure and system of government that exists, and they have undermined the stability of the country. That is not the attitude of a patriot. So I'm saying that this current bit of people in government, I don't see any hope for Dominica to go anywhere under them.
So the 21 people that are there are basically null and void to you in your mind.
Well, yes, point blank.
Here-
They're not
here's-
functioning.
all
Yeah.
right, so
Fair statement.
here's another way that I would put it, Andy. First of all, I agree with many fact, the vast majority of the things you say. As a matter of fact, I want to take you up one of those days and let us do exactly what you're suggesting we should do. Pull out these people's name and look at their performance and their productivity and so on. I think it's a good way for the Dominican people to be able to evaluate their performance, right? But I want to agree with Simeon that Andy, there's a fellow called Michael Douglas who was a very good friend of mine, and he had a thing saying Gasoni Espoir Malpapai. If you expect these fellas, they know to do any other things you're talking about, because let's face it, Andy, you're a businessman. You've been around for a while. You see what people do and how people get success and how to get results. If you are doing the same thing the same way for 24 years, is there a good chance that you would change and do something differently just because Andy says so? You're not listening to Andy, listening to themselves. Not only that, but remember, Andy, yes, they have another 3 more years or so to go in the mandate. But man, don't forget there was an election in 2019 when this gentleman said, oh, we're going to do a reset because our fellows are not performing. And then in 2022, oh, we're going to do another reset because they're not performing. I think what he's telling us clearly is that these people that he personally handpicked to put in there are not performing. And therefore, Andy, as a good CEO, you would fire the guy who selected those people working for you, and all of them not performing. You'd fire him because tell him you're the reason why we're not getting results, because you pick people who are non-performers. Therefore, you cannot be a good manager. All right. So, Delbert, here's what I want to say: that in fact, you know, I don't think there is really hope that this particular regime, is some of the young people, they may mean well, they may mean well. But the way they were handpicked, it's not like the community selected them and said, okay, listen, we're picking you and putting you up there. You represent us. Your allegiance is not to a prime minister or this, or your allegiance is to us, the people who gave you that mandate. But the way it's being done is that these people were not selected by their communities. Remember in Salibia, in the Kainago territory, what happened? There was a thing coming down, and some of the PAL reps who were expecting that they were going to continue to be representatives, They came there ready to go and make their speech on stage, and then they found out, well, wait, I'm not good. Somebody else has been picked instead of me, and their committees know nothing about it. So I'm saying that Andy is quite right about a lot of the things he said tonight, except that I'm not sure. In fact, I doubt very much whether the same group under the same leader is going to do any of those things that Andy and you and Simeon are talking about here tonight. Your final words, Delbert?
Mr. J, I'm so happy to be here tonight, and I'm really proud of this closing statement that both Simeon and Andy made. It shows that these gentlemen have the true interest of Dominica and Dominica's children at heart. And January of 2025 will be 25 years of this government missing the good governance mark in spectacular fashion. I don't think it is fair to them to ask them to keep trying. I don't think it's fair to them to ask them to continue to make a mess of themselves, where they should have done and they should have this and they should have that, and they end up just shooting all over themselves. I think it is time to relieve them of the burden of Dominica, because they have demonstrated that it is too heavy. If 25 years is not enough time to prove that the work is too much, I don't know what is. But Mr. G, I want to highlight something that Simeon said. It is going to take all of us. It is going to take all of us, and it's going to take the nurses. It's going to take the policemen. It's going to take the fire officers and the teachers and the people in the private sector who have invested their savings and their time and money. Mark you, these investors could have done it elsewhere, but they chose Dominica, more than likely because Dominica was home. All of these nurses and fire officers, young people giving their life, all of their youth to service and country, and having nothing to show for it. Mr. G, maybe that's why you called me a budding politician, because I got so excited tonight when Simeon said that, because I want to stand with those people. I want to stand with them, and I have a couple friends that are willing to stand with them when they are ready, for us to stand together to say, time is up. You can't go any further. You've done all you can. It is now time for people who have Dominica's interest at heart to take up the real mandate of leadership. People who have suffered together with you, people who understand your plight, people who see the economy from the same lens that you see it from, and who have the skill set. What else do you say, Mr. G? The talent, the ability to clearly to speak clearly with energy and foresight and ingenuity, who are willing to take up that real mandate in an honest, ethical, and creative manner to take Dominica forward. Mr. G, it is time. It is time for a new day to dawn in Dominica, and for Dominica's children to finally have hope that they can succeed in their own country. For Dominican seniors to recognize finally that they can retire in peace and they can live out their last days in paradise, a paradise that they call home, where investors all over the seas, Dominican and non-Dominican, can see Dominica as a place to invest profitably. Where Dominica, home, Isle of Beauty, Isle of Splendor, where we can be okay. And we won't be petrified to have Dominica as our only option, because it will be a very, very good option to have. Mr. G, the time is now. And I think Dominicans are ready to move forward and for a new day to dawn, a day of hope and success for Dominica and Dominica's children. Thank you for having me.
Very true. And I agree that Dominicans are looking for new leadership now, Simeon. And I want to believe, Simeon, that I would rather believe, in fact, that the people who are in power now, I rather like to believe that they don't really know what to do. I'd rather believe that than to believe that they know what to do Yet they had a mandate to do it. They had the money to do it, and yet they deliberately did not do it. I'd rather think that they did not know. And if they did not know and then they're willing to learn, then it means that Andy's recommendation might make sense. But if they knew and they did not do it and they spent 24 years not doing it, I think I agree with you, Delbert. It is time for a new dispensation. Your final thoughts, Simeon?
Well, to be honest, I think after 24 years to express any positivity or hope in the current regime and prime minister is, uh, I think, misplacing hope. Uh, Someone who has been given time and time again an opportunity to prove himself and to afford the Dominicans an opportunity to have a positive appraisal of his potential and what he can do. I label the current prime minister as a squandered opportunity and a wasted promise. That's how I label him. Squandered opportunity and a wasted promise. He has had the opportunity to be the best that he can be, and there was a lot of promise held in him of being able to take Dominica somewhere, and he has not. And I think to rest any hope in them or him taking Dominica any further is promising a pie in the sky. Let me end by saying Dominica is centrally located at the heart of the Eastern Caribbean. At one time, Dominica was called the fruit basket of the Caribbean because we supplied almost every country from St. Thomas and St. Croix all the way down to Grenada, with the exception of Tobago, with fruits and vegetables. Dominica was once the shining star of healthcare in the Caribbean. Particularly, we had primary healthcare under people like Dr. McIntyre and Dr. Etienne. Dominica exported the best of policemen to the Caribbean, making them chief commissioners of police. We exported the best of teachers to all the and lecturers to all the major educational institutions in the Caribbean. We were the major exporter of soap to the entire Eastern Caribbean, as well as one time we were the world's leading exporter of limes and citrus. That's what we were. Before St. Lucia started manufacturing and bottling their Barons enterprises, we had Bello Factory, which was becoming a shine, which was exporting all the pepper sauce and passion fruit juice and guava cheese and everything else to the rest of the Caribbean. Apart from Trinidad, we were the leading manufacturer for sun-style garments of garment manufacturing in Dominica. At one time, we manufactured cars in Dominica. At one time, through E.H. Charles Brothers, we were the second leading furniture manufacturing country in Dominica. At one time, if you throw your mind back to 1978, August of 1978, we had one of the best trade fairs in the entire Eastern Caribbean that occupied SMA, St. Martin Secondary School, Convent High School, and Grammar School, where thousands of people from the Caribbean came to Dominica to witness and to see what Dominica was producing. I believe Dominica can regain that status. I believe that we can once again become the leading country in agriculture in the Caribbean, the leading manufacturer in the Caribbean, the place where every island in the Caribbean would come to tap into our knowledge base of our Dominicans. There is great potential for the young people of Dominica. The land in Dominica is still very much underutilized. Dominicans are the hardest working people in the Caribbean. You go to every Caribbean country and you see them. And I think the only way for Dominica to maximize its potential right now is so Dominica be allowed to breathe a breath of fresh air, and where we can usher in a government that would give us the right kind of governance so that Dominica can be productive once again and be indeed that country that is par exemplar in every aspect of culture, agriculture, education, manufacturing, and every other aspect. We can do that. And I believe we can do that. The right leadership, the right government, and we will get there. Dominicans are just waiting for that glimmer of hope.
And Simeon, thank you for that. Let me just add a little something just to sort of, you trust but you verify. So I know Simeon is talking the truth when he talked about some of those things that were done. I know because I was involved in three of those things, Simeon, as you might recall. I was involved with that trade show at the St. Martin School. I was president of Dominica Garment Manufacturers Association, which organized that trade show. I was also involved with Trini Industries, with the biggest garment manufacturer in Dominica. We exported garments to every island in the Caribbean from Jamaica to Guyana, including Guadeloupe and Martinique. And I was also involved, and we're very happy to be involved in the startup of the World Creole Music Festival. So Dominica has done things, has taken initiatives. Some of us have to be proud of what we've done, but we never do it alone. It's always a team, and that is what I think we're saying here tonight. We have to recognize that all of these political parties and forces in the opposition, they have to understand it takes teamwork. It takes good leadership, but it has to take teamwork and organization and structure. And the only way to do that is to get together and talk and then get it done. Make a plan, not to just have a talk shop, but to get it done. Because what the results you want is to improve the lives, the quality of life, and the living standards of the people of Dominica. That is why you elect politicians to govern you, to work for you, to improve your life, not for them to improve theirs. Because I mean, it is impossible to tell me that I mean, let's face it, let's go back to Edward Oliver Cleveland. The man went into office, see me, and he how much money, and he left with how much money? $100 something. That is what Edward Cleveland. And then you know what happened to Edward Cleveland? A lot of farmers bought their own transport, cash. They built their house. They did their send their children to school under Edward Oliver Cleveland. That is the kind of. We're not saying that a politician must go in and come out there broke and poor. So no, we're not saying that in today's day. You have to take care of your family as well and live a decent life. But don't tell me that your public officers are getting 0 and 0 and 1%, and you're taking 50% on top of it for what you have already. So I'm just saying, gentlemen, I just want to thank you so much for being here tonight. I think this conversation was really, really uplifting, very edifying for me. And I'm pretty sure for all our folks on Facebook who are still with us on YouTube, listening on the radio, I'm sure we didn't get to read any of your messages, but I just want to tell you how grateful we are that you stayed with us tonight like you do every Tuesday night. And we hope that we can come back on next Tuesday night with another topic that could be of interest. But Simeon, I want to take up Andy because Andy's a fellow, I like his ideas. And he's a man, he's of experience, a practical man. And he does not talk like an intellectual, I know he's an intellectual, but he speaks like a pragmatic man. This is a man of experience. And the language Andy uses, I like it. He tells you, listen, results matter. That's what he says. Go there and get results for the people. So thank you, Andy. Thank you, Delbert. People saying you're a budding politician. I think you are a politician. You're not budding anymore. You're there. I think you sound like you care about the people. Just maintain that, keep it up, because that is what people are looking for. Simeon and you're in the same boat, You're not getting away. People are asking for you too. And every time Andy go on the radio with Matt, you know how many people calling Andy and saying, boy, Andy, we need you to. But I don't know if Andy want to, Andy has so much.
Well, I'm here to tell you, we spent a lot of time on the governance tonight, but the most important point that we left out, and this is if we ever want to see Dominica progress, and we could start this tomorrow, is we need to make sure that our government governs. Get government out of the private sector. Get government out of businesses. Get government out of making their money or selling or giving away anything. Just get government to govern. So if we could just have a government that governs, we as the private sector have the money and have the mind to do everything else. Leave us the hell alone and let us go to work. We're smart enough to know what to do, but government needs to govern. And this is one thing that this government hasn't done. The government actually thinks they're part of the private sector. The government needs to stay out of the private sector, go back and make policy, go back and govern. So I hope they learned something from Simeon tonight about what governance is. because that is really all we need the government to do, to govern.
Can we say amen to that, Simeon? All right. So, gentlemen, thank you so much and have a great night, Simeon, a great night, Delbert, a great night. Andy, I want to apologize for Dr. Irving Andre, who really could not be with us here tonight. Send me messages, and Dr. Fontaine as well. He did indicate to me you're going to make every effort, but he could not be here with us tonight. Thank you, Thompson, for making the effort to be with us here tonight. We missed you, and we hope that your contribution can come in another time when we do, because we're not going to stop doing this. Because if we have to get Dominica moving forward, we have to keep planning ahead. This is what we as a people want to do, make our own lives better. We cannot keep depending on politicians. Politicians are telling us depend on them. They're wrong. We should not depend on them. So good night, everybody. Good night, Lambi. Good night, Sherwin.
Good night. Good night.
Okay, everybody.
Good night.
See you all
Good
next
night.
time.
Good night. Good night. Take care.
Good
All
night.
right. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.
View on Q, the big station. Insights into where the people of Dominica and the Caribbean came from. Understanding our past. Embracing our present. Charting the way forward into our future. Together, eliminating poverty. Embracing justice, peace, and togetherness. The Global View on Q. Networking Dominica with the rest of the world. The experts are in the house. From Dominica, Canada, the Caribbean, the United States, Europe, Asia, and the rest of the world. Engaging all Dominicans at home and abroad on our agriculture, our economy, our foreign relations, our justice system, our governance, our international competitiveness, our education, our world-class festivals and entertainment, sports, politics, regional cooperation, and much more. Globally positioning Dominica